In 1952, 17-year-old Elvis always sat alone in the Humes High School cafeteria. One day, a new girl named Mary asked, "Why are you always alone?" Elvis answered, "Because nobody understands." Mary said, "I understand." She became his first real friend and his first true fan. This is the story of how one person believing in you can change everything. It was October 1952. Elvis was in his senior year at Humes High School in Memphis. He was the weird kid, too poor, too different, hair too long, clothes too strange. While other boys wore jeans and plain shirts, Elvis experimented with his appearance, trying to find himself through his look. While other boys played sports, Elvis carried a guitar. Every day at lunch, Elvis would get his tray, usually whatever was cheapest, and sit at a table in the corner of the cafeteria. Always alone, always hunched over his food, trying to be invisible while somehow standing out just by existing. Other students would walk past his table, sometimes making comments just loud enough for him to hear. "There's the weirdo. Why's he dressed like that? Thinks he's special or something." Elvis learned to ignore them, learned to eat quickly and leave, learned that being alone was safer than trying to fit in with people who didn't want him. But alone still hurt, even when you get used to it. On a Tuesday in October, a new student transferred to Humes. Her name was Mary Sullivan. Her family had just moved to Memphis from Nashville. She was 16, quiet, observant, didn't quite fit the mold of the popular girls at school. Mary got her lunch tray and looked around the cafeteria. Groups of students clustered at tables, jocks, popular girls, band kids, everyone in their designated spots. Then she saw Elvis, sitting alone in the corner, picking at his food, his guitar case leaning against the wall next to him. Something about his isolation called to her. Maybe because she knew how it felt to be the new kid. Maybe because she recognized loneliness when she saw it. Maybe because she was brave enough to reach out when most people would just walk past. Mary walked over to Elvis's table. "Is this seat taken?" Elvis looked up, surprised. People didn't sit with him. No, it's not taken. You can sit." Mary sat down across from him. "I'm Mary. I just started here today. I don't know anybody yet." "I'm Elvis. I've been here 3 years. I don't know anybody either." Mary smiled at his honesty. "How's that possible? You've been here 3 years. Knowing people and knowing people are different things. I know their names. They know I exist. But nobody really knows me. And I don't really know them." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Mary asked the question everyone wondered but nobody asked. "Why are you always alone?" Elvis had prepared answers for this question, defensive ones, sarcastic ones, dismissive ones. But something about Mary's tone made him tell the truth. "Because nobody understands," Elvis said quietly. "I don't fit anywhere. I'm too poor for the rich kids, too white for the black kids whose music I love, too different for the regular kids. So I sit alone. It's easier than trying to fit into spaces that don't want me." "What don't they understand?" Mary asked. "That I'm serious about music, that it's not just a hobby or something I do for attention, that I hear things in my head, combinations of sounds, ways of singing, new kinds of music, and I need to get them out. But when I try to explain that, people look at me like I'm crazy. So I stopped explaining." Mary was quiet for a moment, really considering what he'd said. Then, "I understand." Elvis looked at her skeptically. "You just met me. How could you understand?" "Because I feel the same way about writing. I write stories, poetry, songs sometimes. And when I try to explain to people why I spend all my free time writing things nobody will ever read, they look at me like I'm wasting my time. But it's not a waste. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. So I understand when something matters to you so much that you can't explain it to people who don't feel it." Elvis stared at this girl who'd been at his school for 3 hours and somehow understood him better than anyone had in 3 years. "Can I hear you play sometime?" Mary asked. "Your guitar? You want to hear me play?" "If you want to play for me. Only if you want to. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." "I'd like that," Elvis said, and meant it. They sat together for the rest of lunch, talking about music and writing and what it felt like to be the person who didn't quite fit anywhere. By the time the bell rang, Elvis had his first real friend at Humes High School. Over the next weeks, Mary and Elvis sat together every lunch period. Mary brought friends occasionally, other kids who were artsy, different, kind. Suddenly, Elvis's corner table became a gathering place for the misfits, the artists, the kids who didn't fit the standard molds. Mary became Elvis's champion. When other students made comments about his appearance, Mary would defend him. He's finding his style. That takes courage. When teachers dismissed his musical ambitions, Mary would argue, he's going to be someone. You'll see. Elvis played guitar for Mary in empty classrooms after school. She'd listen, really listen, and tell him what she heard in his voice. You sound like nobody else. That's going to matter someday. The world is going to want what you have. How do you know? Elvis would ask. Because what you have is real, and real always wins eventually. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not easily, but eventually. In November, Elvis performed at a small local event, a church social where they needed entertainment. It was his first real performance for an audience beyond school music class. He was terrified. Mary sat in the front row. When Elvis walked out with his guitar, shaking with nerves, he looked at the audience and found Mary's face. She smiled at him, nodded, mouthed, "You've got this." Elvis sang. It wasn't perfect. His voice cracked once, his guitar playing was technically adequate but not virtuosic. But there was something in his performance that grabbed people, an authenticity, a need to be heard. Mary stood up and started clapping before the song ended. Then others joined in. By the time Elvis finished, the room was applauding. After the performance, Mary came up to him crying. "You're going to be famous," she said. "I know it. I just watched the beginning of something." "It was just a church social," Elvis said, trying to dismiss it, because accepting praise felt dangerous, like hoping. "It was you finding your courage. That's bigger than a church social." Mary kept her promise. As Elvis started performing more, small venues, local events, eventually his first radio appearances, Mary was always there. Front row when possible. In the audience, always. His first true fan who believed in him before there was any reason to believe. When Elvis made his first recording at Sun Records in 1954, Mary took a bus from Memphis to the studio just to be outside when he finished, to hear how it went. "I recorded 2 songs," Elvis told her, still shaking with adrenaline. "I don't know if they're any good." "They're good," Mary said with certainty, "because you made them, and everything you make has something real in it." When Elvis's first single started getting radio play, Mary was working at a department store. She'd turn the radio up whenever his song came on, telling customers, "That's my friend. I knew him when he ate lunch alone." As Elvis's fame grew, Mary stayed constant. She didn't want anything from him except his continued belief in himself. She'd send letters. "Remember when you sat alone and nobody understood? You were right to keep going. You were right to believe music mattered. Never forget that." In 1956, when Elvis appeared on national television for the first time, Mary watched from her parents' living room in Memphis, crying. The boy who'd sat alone in the cafeteria was now someone the whole country was watching. And she'd known. She'd seen it before anyone else. Elvis called her afterward from New York. "Did you watch?" "Every second. I told everyone here that I knew you when nobody else did, that I was your first fan." "You were more than my first fan, Mary. You were my first friend who understood. That's bigger than being a fan. That's believing in someone when they're nobody." Mary Sullivan never sought fame or recognition for knowing Elvis. She didn't sell her story to magazines, didn't write a tell-all book. She just remained his friend, the person who'd sat down at his table when everyone else walked past. When Elvis married Priscilla in 1967, Mary was invited to the wedding, not as a fan, as someone who mattered. Elvis introduced her to everyone important. "This is Mary. She sat with me when nobody else would. She believed in me when I was nobody." "You were never nobody, Elvis," Mary said. "You were always somebody. The world just hadn't noticed yet. I just had the privilege of noticing first." After Elvis died in 1977, Mary gave one interview, just one, to a local Memphis paper. She told the story of the cafeteria, of asking why he was alone, of his answer, "Because nobody understands." "I wanted people to know that Elvis wasn't always Elvis Presley the star," Mary said. "He was Elvis Aaron, a lonely kid at Humes High School who needed someone to believe in him. And I got to be that person. That's the greatest honor of my life. Not that I knew someone famous, but that I saw someone's value before fame proved I was right." The interviewer asked what Elvis would want people to remember about him. That he was real, Mary said without hesitation. That he felt deeply, that he struggled, that he needed the same things we all need, to be seen, to be understood, to matter to someone. The fame, the music, the legend, all of that is real. But so was the lonely 17-year-old who sat by himself in a cafeteria wondering if anyone would ever understand what he was trying to do. Mary's story became important to people who felt alone, who felt misunderstood, who felt like nobody got them. If Mary could see Elvis when he was nobody, they'd say, then maybe someone will see me. Maybe I'm not as invisible as I think. The story also became important to people who had the power to see others, teachers, parents, friends. Be like Mary became a kind of mantra. Be the person who sits down at the lonely kid's table, who asks, "Why are you alone?" and actually listens to the answer, who understands when others dismiss. Mary lived a quiet life. She married, had children, worked as a librarian in Memphis. When people recognized her name, "Weren't you friends with Elvis?" she'd smile and say, "I was lucky enough to believe in him before it was obvious, that's all." But it wasn't just that. Mary taught Elvis something essential, that one person believing in you can be enough, that you don't need everyone to understand. You need someone to understand. And that someone believing deeply matters more than crowds believing casually. Elvis carried that lesson his entire life. Whenever he felt alone, which was often, even at the height of fame, he'd remember Mary sitting down at his table, asking why he was alone, listening to his answer, understanding without judgment, believing without proof. "Sometimes one person is enough," Elvis told Larry Geller once. "When I was 17 and everybody thought I was weird, one person sat down and said, 'I understand.' That person saved me, not from failure, from believing I was supposed to be alone." Mary Sullivan died in 2003 at age 67. At her funeral, her family played Elvis's music, not the famous songs, but a recording he'd made in 1972 and sent her privately, him playing guitar, singing one of her favorite oldie songs with a message at the beginning. This is for Mary, who sat down when everyone else walked past, who understood when nobody else tried, who believed when there was no reason to believe. Thank you for being my first real friend. Thank you for teaching me that one person believing is enough. This is your song. Elvis. Today, at Humes High School, now a museum, there's a small plaque in the cafeteria. It reads, "In October 1952, a lonely student sat here. A brave student asked, 'Why are you alone?' One person understanding changed both their lives. May we all be brave enough to sit down. May we all be kind enough to ask. May we all be wise enough to understand." That's the legacy of Mary Sullivan and Elvis Presley. Not just that she believed in someone who became famous, but that she taught all of us the power of sitting down when others walk past, the courage of asking why someone's alone, the grace of understanding without judgment. Sometimes one person is enough. Sometimes one moment of connection changes everything. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is sit at a stranger's table and say, "I understand." Mary did that. Elvis never forgot it, and because he didn't forget, neither will we. If this story of loneliness, friendship, and the power of one person believing moved you, subscribe and share it. When did someone believe in you when no one else did? Let us know in the comments. Hit that notification bell for more true stories about the friendships that change everything.